Divorce papers had been duly filed, and when it came to dividing the property, I made the decision to claim the house. Despite my insistence, Vin dismissed any notion that he could contest it. Uttering those final words, he abruptly left the hospital room, indifferent to my pleas for him to wait, and my desire for a meaningful conversation. That was how I found myself discarded, even in the midst of battling a serious illness like cancer. Loneliness enveloped me, but strangely, the negative emotions that once lingered in my heart began to dissipate. It was as if my love for Vin had evaporated. At that moment, I acknowledged that Vin, who had insulted me and consistently acted selfishly, deserved some form of retribution. I began calmly strategizing my revenge. My name is Wendy Morgan, a 50-year-old housewife living with my husband Vin. Our marriage, devoid of children, had spanned 30 years. Initially, I believed we were a supportive couple, but an irreparable rift had developed between us. In my understanding of marriage, partners should support, challenge, and complement each other. However, this was absent in our relationship. Returning from an errand, I found Vin demanding dinner immediately, oblivious to the continuous responsibilities of a housewife. Even on his days off, he prioritized his own leisure over supporting me. Over the years, Vin never extended a helping hand, regardless of how busy or unwell I was. His perception of a housewife's role seemed limited to constant labor, and he never allowed me to rest, even during illness. I had hoped for a marriage built on mutual support, but Vin's actions contradicted that ideal. The early days saw me attempting to bridge the gap, but Vin remained resolute, asserting his belief that as a housewife, I had no grounds to complain. Love had long faded, and I didn't anticipate unwavering support in everything. Still, I longed for simple kindness during challenging days. Vin's refusal to acknowledge my humanity and hardships widened the rift between us, turning our marriage joyless and meaningless. I grasped the situation more acutely than anyone else. It was during this realization that I sensed something awry with my health. While I had always been prone to illness, this time felt distinctly different. I promptly reached out to my father, who escorted me to the hospital, where I received the diagnosis of cancer. Fortunately, it was detected early, and the doctor assured me that I could commence treatment immediately. Eager to begin the healing process, I implored my father to bring only the essentials from home. Hastily, I navigated through the hospital admission procedures. Unable to meet Ben that day due to his work commitments, I conveyed the disquieting news to him. Through a brief message, I informed him, "Cancer has been found, and I'm being hospitalized for treatment immediately." In these moments of anxiety about the uncertain future, Ben's image crept into my thoughts. Despite my belief that my love for him had waned, a latent desire to face him properly and continue our life together as a couple lingered deep within my heart. Even though Ben had consistently been aloof and indifferent, I envisioned a scenario where, now that I was weakened, he might express concern and ask, "Are you okay?" I yearned for some warm words and would have been content with just one visit. I wondered if he struggled with meals and household chores in my absence. I felt remorse for not being able to fulfill the household duties I had always taken for granted. However, as days passed in the hospital, Ben never visited. He had read my message, and yet there was no expression of concern, not even a simple reply acknowledging the situation. His apparent indifference, despite my serious illness, shook me to the core, causing profound pain. Realizing the futility of my expectations, I decided to stop anticipating anything from Ben. With this newfound mindset, I faced the grueling battle against the illness. The treatment was as demanding as expected, marked by enduring pain and suffering. The medication's side effects took a toll on my body, leading to many sleepless nights filled with discomfort. There were moments when I contemplated giving up on treatment, allowing my deteriorating body to take its course and end my life. However, each time I felt this way, the encouraging words from my parents, reassuring me that I was doing great and things would surely get better, compelled me to summon strength and endure. Until today. Then, on a day when I was particularly unwell, lying in bed and staring blankly at the ceiling, the door to my room unexpectedly swung open. It wasn't the day for my parents to visit, and I couldn't help but wonder who had entered. The identity of the visitor became clear as I shifted my gaze and saw Ben standing there. Had he finally come to visit me, genuinely concerned about my condition? As he looked at my emaciated face with hollow cheeks, a whirlwind of emotions left me speechless. Would he come to dislike me even more? Without displaying any concern for my state, Ben sat on a chair next to the bed, stared at me and laughed. So this is how bad one can look with cancer, huh? You don't even look like a woman anymore. His words made me feel as if the blood had drained from my face. These were words that should never be said to someone fighting cancer. I didn't want him to say anything more, but unaware of my feelings, Ben continued with even more hurtful words. Ever since you've been hospitalized and not at home, every day has been like heaven. The house is a mess, but I don't even have to go back there. Life is so comfortable without you. His heartless words reopened my wounds. Why must I be subjected to such cruel words? Why is there not a single word of concern from him? Although I wanted to vehemently criticize Ben, my weakened body couldn't move as I wished, and all I could do was silently accept his brutal words. I looked at Ben with a vacant gaze, and noticing my stare, he laughed condescendingly. Then, suddenly saying, "Oh yeah, by the way," he uttered unbelievable words. "Oh yeah, by the way, I've already filed the divorce papers. I'll be taking the house. As for the property division, you hardly have any right to refuse." The moment I heard those words, my vision blurred and twisted. Did he file the divorce papers without even consulting me? Why? As I was at a loss for words, Ben continued to speak. "I've really fallen for someone. She's 20 years younger, but I'm serious about her. I plan to be with her, so you're in the way." The realization that he was having an affair raced through my mind. However, then, having said what he wanted to, began preparing to leave. Wait a minute. Even as I said that, Ben paid no attention. There was clearly no love left for me in his heart. The realization was so painful that it didn't matter anymore. "I see. Understood." I said this, and Ben left the hospital room with a pleased laugh. After that, I endured my treatment with even more determination than before. Despite the hardships, I focused my will, resolved to completely cure my cancer and regain my health. 2 days passed like this. It might sound short, but for me, unable to sleep properly at night, those 2 days felt very long. I wondered if the divorce Ben mentioned really happened, or if he had said it just to unnerve me. The uncertainty was unbearable, but somehow I managed to continue my treatment. In fact, I had a trump card to completely bring down Ben. Even Ben, who seemed almost inhuman, would be thrown into chaos once he realized it. If panicked, he would surely try to contact me in some way. While waiting with this thought, Ben's call came in. Thinking it improper to answer in the hospital room, I pretended not to notice. But Ben persistently kept calling, even on silent mode. The continuous calls were too annoying. I'm in the hospital room, and it's inconvenient to have my phone ringing, so please don't call. After sending this message, the calls finally stopped. But then came texts like, "Please let me talk to you just once. Please, I was wrong about everything. I'll apologize properly." Realized why I accepted the divorce so easily. "Can I come over there now?" Faced with my silence, Ben seemed to have reached his limit and sent that message. Honestly, facing Ben now amidst my grueling battle with illness felt like nothing but pain. But if I refused, he would probably keep calling. So I replied, "Do as you like." My revenge was about to begin. Ben, who had unjustly treated me for so long and divorced without consent, deserved a severe punishment that would make him despise his life. I had been eagerly anticipating the moment when I could bring him down to the depths of despair. "Hey, what the hell is this all about?" Ben entered the room with a shout, his tone suggesting a sense of panic. To an outsider, it might seem like he was overreacting, but given the circumstances, it was natural for Ben to be agitated. After all, I had been concealing an incredibly important secret, and the critical moment had arrived. "I had no idea that you had assets worth 10 million. Why didn't you tell me how much you had?" Ben spoke, placing my passbook on the desk, clearly displaying a deposit of over $10 million. I never mentioned it because you never asked. How could I imagine a housewife like you having so much money? If I knew you had this much, I wouldn't have divorced. That's not my problem. It's Ben's fault for divorcing me without proper confirmation. Stop with the pointless excuses. Despite his domineering behavior and divorcing me without my consent, Ben couldn't stop his selfish remarks upon discovering my assets. "Why didn't you tell me? I wouldn't have divorced you if I knew." I decided to reveal the truth to the selfish Ben. The truth is, I accumulated this fortune of over $10 million through investments. I started to fill my spare time, and it was my parents who suggested, "Why don't you try investing?" Our family life was comfortable even on Ben's salary alone, but I wanted to contribute to our finances in some way. My father, knowledgeable about investments, immediately taught me diligently when I expressed interest. Thanks to his guidance, I started with the hope of making even a small profit and continued investing steadily. I made my first investment 5 years ago, and since then, I rapidly improved, becoming capable of earning significant amounts of money through investments. Even my father was astonished, saying, "I never expected you to grow this much." The profits I generated over these 5 years are the $10 million recorded in the passbook Ben brought. Actually, I was planning to tell you when the timing was right, but then I got cancer. You divorced me without listening to anything I had to say. I never intended to keep this wealth a secret forever. Once I overcame my battle with cancer and could return to my normal life, I planned to tell Ben about this $10 million. I had originally intended to share it with him, envisioning that we could continue our life as a couple and use it when necessary. However, Ben selfishly chose to divorce before I could reveal this financial secret. Now that we're strangers, it feels odd to disclose it to him. Given this outcome, the entire $10 million probably belongs to me. As I recounted my story, Ben's face flushed, and he began shouting, "If I knew you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced you. It's your fault for keeping it a secret, so pay me $10 million in the property division. You need to atone for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband." Whether he was panicking over the reality of such a vast fortune or frustrated that he couldn't get his hands on it, Ben started saying the unthinkable. Since we were already divorced, no matter what, it was impossible to give him this $10 million. Still, Ben, seen but unable to reach the $1 million right before him, started making unrealistic demands. In response, I unintentionally laughed. Ben yelled at me, "What are you laughing at? Stop belittling me. I've always been annoyed by your attitude. I never thought you'd be so cunning to have such a fortune as a wife. A wife's assets belong to her husband. You have to give me this $10 million. I never intended to keep this secret forever. I was planning to tell you, but you divorced me first. Stop making excuses. It's all your fault for keeping secrets." Without any recollection of making excuses, Ben became more enraged with each word I spoke, blaming and berating me. His shouting was too much for my head, still recovering from illness, and I couldn't bear it. Realizing it was futile to continue talking with Ben, who wouldn't accept my words and would surely try to make me the villain, I quickly ended it. Enough is enough. You divorced me of your own accord, right? Who filed the divorce papers without my consent? I always thought your behavior was terrible, but I never imagined you could be so cruel. To think a person could feel this much frustration. Now my heart was filled not with the pain of babbling cancer, but with resentment towards Ben. He should have realized that shouting this loudly would affect my weakened body. More than that, I couldn't suppress my anger towards this selfish person who sat arrogantly beside my bed, accusing me with words born from his self-centered thoughts. Do you know what I thought when I found out I had cancer? I thought that answering him might make Ben worry about me a little, be kinder to me, and reconsider his feelings. Instead, he didn't even come to visit me in the hospital. When he finally showed up, he told me he had filed for divorce without my consent and that he would take the house. How could he be so selfish and then come here criticizing me for having substantial assets? I've said it many times, I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was planning to find the right time to tell you. You destroyed that chance with your own hands. I had never blamed Ben this much before. I had always forgiven his selfish behavior, thinking we were a couple who should support each other. I never scolded or reprimanded him, always enduring for his sake. But the reason I could endure and keep going was that I had love for Ben. I truly loved him, but now I don't have any love left for him. All I feel is uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards Ben, who only speaks selfishly. How can someone be so self-centered? What kind of upbringing leads to such a lack of empathy? After all, a person who indulges in an affair and divorces without consent can't possibly have serious thoughts. I was too stunned to speak, realizing it was futile to harbor any doubts. Please, my girlfriend found out you have $10 million and says she'll divorce me if I don't get it from you. If I don't get this money, I'll be all alone. You still love me, right? Don't you want to help the person you love? So Ben's mistress also knows about my $10 million fortune. He must have carelessly told her. From Ben's story, it seems his mistress is also quite obsessed with money. Birds of a feather flock together, I guess. As much as Ben and his mistress seem to be a match, I couldn't care less about him. No matter how much suffering comes his way, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the $10 million, otherwise I'll suffer. Please help me. I had never seen Ben so desperate, and his expressions seemed so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, I felt disappointed and miserable, realizing he had never been this desperate about anything related to me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for Ben became. I realized that talking to him anymore was pointless. No more dealing with this rotten man could possibly lead to my happiness. I felt foolish for suffering and hoping during my illness that he might come and speak kindly to me. One day, oblivious to my feelings, then continue to plead. Please, I'm begging you. Help me. But I couldn't bear to hear his words any longer. Please leave now, I said, then started to plead with a look of desperation. Even that was noisy and unpleasant to me. I pressed the nurse call button, explained the situation, and asked the nurse to get rid of Ben. A security guard came and forcibly removed him from the room. Please listen to me. I need you, he shouted until the moment he was thrown out. But I no longer accepted any of his words. Afterwards, he visited the hospital many times, but the nurses, knowing the situation, never let him near my room again. According to a friend, Ben, unable to get the $10 million, disappointed his mistress and was promptly divorced. Now left alone as for me, I continued to confront my cancer with determination and finally recovered and was discharged. The relief of overcoming my difficult battle with cancer and the newfound energy I felt were more precious than anything. Now I'm living a peaceful and relaxed life, gradually. Using the assets I grew through investments. I'm sorry, but we already departed while I was using the restroom at the rest area. During that time, I received a call from Luke and I couldn't help but wonder what he wanted at such a moment. Upon answering, I overheard Luke and his in-laws laughing boisterously. When I inquired about the commotion, he shared something unbelievable. They were going to enjoy themselves with the family and I could head back home to clean or do something productive. Anticipating this trip for a long time, I felt a mix of excitement and reservations about traveling with his family. Staying in a luxury inn was something I had looked forward to. However, the shock of being left alone at a rest area, inside the restroom stall, left me feeling deeply betrayed. Despite my anger, I lightly replied, "Okay, unforgivable." Today marked not only our wedding anniversary but also my birthday, and we embarked on this trip. I decided that he would regret this. My name is Lucy Mitchell, a 33-year-old housewife, without children, living with my husband Luke. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary. On my birthday, Luke, with his romantic nature, always cherished our anniversaries and birthdays. He was raised in a wealthy family and those childhood memories lingered, prompting him to celebrate special days in grand style. We met at a matchmaking agency where men from affluent backgrounds like Luke were popular. Despite initial doubts, I approached him and luckily, I seemed to be his type, leading to our marriage. Unbeknownst to me, after getting married, my life would take a turn for the worse. A year ago, Luke and I started our marital life in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Luke desired a larger house but I disagreed, suggesting we live within our means. Despite his family's wealth, I felt guilty about our expensive $1,200 room as a housewife. Luke assured me, "Don't worry, my dad will sort it out." As time passed, our marital life took a troubling turn. Luke's frequent visits to his parents' house, even for seemingly trivial reasons, left me feeling uneasy about our new life. This unease grew when he casually mentioned having dinner with his parents on a regular evening without inviting me, his wife. The frequent absence and lack of inclusion in family events made me question the dynamics of our marriage. As I shared my concerns with a friend during a dinner, she expressed surprise at Luke's actions, stating, "He goes home that often and leaves you behind for a cousin's birthday. That's crazy." She had been married for 5 years and she had more experience than me in married life. Realizing that her reaction was a common sentiment, I felt embarrassed. "Yuri. Right, it's weird, but according to Luke, it's normal. Seriously, don't take this the wrong way, but hasn't he really grown up yet?" Maybe upon reflection, her comment struck a chord. It's unusual for a 35-year-old, even if he's set to take over his dad's business, to prioritize family affairs after getting married. I regretted not recognizing Luke's true nature before marrying him. Returning home after dinner with my friend, I felt down. "I'm home, Lucy. Where have you been? Isn't it normal for a wife to cook dinner and wait for her husband, Mrs. Mitchell?" To my surprise, my mother-in-law was in the living room. Luke was apparently out, perhaps at a convenience store. "Why are you here? Virente. You and Luke supposed to dine out tonight? That got cancelled due to some issue at the restaurant. I thought Luke had messaged you just a bit ago. Didn't you check?" She pointed it out, and I looked at my phone. Indeed, 10 minutes ago, Luke had messaged that he'd be home early, but that was just about when I got off the train. There's no way I could have gotten home and started dinner in such a short time. Yes, he did message, but I saw it just now. What the heck? This is the problem with kids from single-parent households. You can tell they weren't raised right. My mother-in-law's words stabbed me in the heart. Indeed, I was raised in a single mother's home. After my mom gave birth to me, my father passed away due to an illness. Despite that, my mother did her best to raise me lovingly. I wish she wouldn't say things that belittled my mother's hard work. It has nothing to do with being raised by a single parent. I just hadn't seen the message yet, I retorted, clearly irritated, but she brushed off my comment and changed the subject. Well, anyway, I've always noticed this, but your house is quite small. I think it's average. It's suitable for just the two of us. You can't be serious. I feel sorry for Luke, living in such a cramped space. My interactions with my mother-in-law continued to stress me out. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law, perhaps because of their wealth, often seemed condescending. That's why I never got along with them. Realizing further conversation was futile, I silently started preparing dinner, ignoring me. She went on and turned on the TV. From that day, she started dropping by unexpectedly. More often. Even my father-in-law came along a couple of times. Mostly, they'd complain about how dirty the kitchen was or how cramped the house felt. Eventually, they'd sarcastically suggest, "You know, we have a bigger house, why not move in?" I absolutely didn't want that. I firmly declined every time. They always visited when Luke wasn't home, so Luke didn't know about their snide remarks. I once talked to him about it, but his reply was, "Why not? Why is living together a bad idea?" I was dismayed when he too suggested moving in. From then on, I realized there was no point in discussing it with Luke, and I endured on my own. Soon, we'd be celebrating our first wedding anniversary, which also happened to be my birthday. For your birthday this weekend, I'm thinking of celebrating more grandly than last year. After all, it's also our anniversary. Luke said as he came home tipsy from work, seeing his flushed face, I couldn't be sure of his sincerity. Knowing his love for celebrations, I felt a hint of excitement. "What? Last year, you treated me to a delicious dinner, which was more than enough. That's nothing compared to what I've planned. Let's go on a family trip." A family trip. The term sounded odd for just the two of us. Noticing my confusion, Luke continued, "My parents, cousins, uncles, and all will join. We're heading to a luxury resort in Palm Springs." All those people, and why Palm Springs? Got a problem with a family trip? Or is it Palm Springs you're not keen on? No, it's not that. Honestly, I couldn't understand why my birthday and our anniversary would involve his family, who had nothing to do with either occasion. I couldn't grasp what Luke was thinking. I've always known he's a bit out of touch with the general populace, but I hadn't expected this level of disparity. While the choice of Palm Springs puzzled me a bit, it wasn't a major issue. Sounds fun, right, Lucy? Sometimes you've got to let loose and enjoy. Luke, in his intoxicated state, grabbed my shoulders, and I found myself nodding in agreement. For the next week, I couldn't get the trip out of my mind. At first, I was skeptical about going with his entire family, but as Luke said, it's a rare vacation, and I should make the most of it. During the trip preparations, I noticed my growing excitement, and a genuine smile crept onto my face. I knew my in-laws would probably make snide remarks as usual, but I vowed to ignore them completely. Finally, the awaited Saturday arrived. Luke and I headed to his parents' house, our meeting point for the trip. "Well, Lucy, you're late, aren't you? Do you even realize you're the star today?" Right in front of the assembled family, my mother-in-law was quick to throw shade, but it seemed she did realize that I was supposed to be the star, so it took the edge off her words a bit. "I'm sorry, there was traffic," I replied. "Excuses won't do. We should leave soon, otherwise we'll be late to our luxury resort." All right, let's get going." Despite their grumbling about our tardiness, it was tolerable. After all, they've been making such remarks throughout the past year. Luke's cousin appeared much younger than him, looking to be in his early 20s, with a sinister look in his eyes. I began to wonder if everyone in this family was mean-spirited. My paranoia was somewhat justified when he made a belittling comment, "This is Luke's wife." Not what I expected. I diverted my gaze from him, figuring that reacting would only invite more nitpicking. I decided to show a mature denier. "I'm so excited. I've been to luxury resorts multiple times, but tonight's place costs $1,000 per person. Hearing the figure, $11,000, I was both shocked and had a sudden thought. No way. Could it be? I climbed into my in-laws' car. Once my father-in-law hit the gas, the car swiftly started moving. The journey from here to our Palm Springs destination would take about 2 hours. We decided to take a short break at the next rest stop. About an hour into our journey, I excused myself. I'll be right back, heading to the restroom. All right, off you go, my mother-in-law waved as it's shooing away a stray dog. I headed to the rest stop bathroom, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me, or was it just my imagination? Taking a deep breath inside the bathroom stall, I felt relieved that the trip had been relatively uneventful so far. I hoped the remainder of our journey would be equally smooth. Just as I was settling into that thought, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Luke's name on the display. Expecting him to ask me to pick something up, I casually answered the call. I'm still in the restroom, Luke. With what sounded like amusement, he replied, alongside the laughter of my mother-in-law. Sorry, but we've already left. There was a moment of stunned silence on my end, and laughter echoed from their side. What do you mean? When I asked Luke, he replied, we're going to have fun with our family. You should just go home and clean, Lucy dear. Today's trip is just for the Mitchell family. It's a pity, but you'll have to stay behind. Goodbye. I was told the unbelievable. I had been looking forward to this trip for a long time. Having his family join us was a bit of a concern, but staying at a luxury hotel had me excited. And now, they'd left me alone at the rest area. I was trembling inside the restroom stall, feeling utterly betrayed. Trying to hide my anger, I responded with a light okay. This was unforgivable. Today was our wedding anniversary and my birthday, and they brought me on this trip. I'll make them regret this. After leaving the restroom, I called someone. The person on the other end was shocked and shared some astonishing news. I asked, really? They responded, yes. Then the person on the phone promised to come pick me up. Left alone at the rest area like this was unbearable. Praying for a timely rescue, an hour later, my uncle came to pick me up in his car. I'm so sorry to trouble you like this. It's okay. It's quite an unfortunate situation. Yes, they're headed to a luxury hotel in Palm Springs. That means my uncle tilted his head in thought, seeming to realize something. I think that's the case, I replied. I'm really sorry, but can you please take me there? I'll take the train back. That it. The drive there is nice anyway. Uncle gladly accepted my request to go to Palm Springs. About an hour later, we arrived. In Palm Springs, Luke and the others came. Here in front of us was a luxurious inn with a grand gate. It was a well-known hotel. The only luxury accommodation I knew of that cost $1,000 a night. At the reception, I was told dinner starts at 6 p.m. Please follow me. The person who greeted me with a smile was my mother. Lucy, it's been a while. Dressed in an elegant outfit and smiling gracefully in a manner that could seem somewhat formal to others. It was undeniably my mother. Indeed, this inn has been run by my mother's family for many years, and she currently holds the position of the innkeeper. After becoming a single mother, she began working at this inn, so to me, this place feels like home. I had called my mother from the rest area and was surprised to hear that there was a reservation today from the group at Mitchell Securities. I had a suspicion when I heard they were going to a luxury hotel in Palm Springs, but I never imagined they would be coming to our very own inn. Of course, the family doesn't know that this inn is run by my mother. Still, what a terrible story, Lucy. You can't just let this slide. Yeah, I know. That's why I came here. I see. Why don't we get you changed over here? I prepared to greet them at the dinner table. An hour later, at 6 p.m., the in-law family gathered for dinner. I hid in the next room to remain unnoticed. I slightly opened the door to observe the inside. The spa was amazing. I'd want to come here every day if I could. If it were closer, we could indeed come every day. At the very least, if you become the CEO, we could afford to come here anytime. Really looking forward to that. I mean, the subordinates handle all the work anyway. I want to become a CEO soon too. Luke and his family, thinking they were among themselves, were making some rather crude remarks. But when my mother appeared from the other side of the door and greeted them, the room went silent. Today, I will be in charge of serving you. Please let me know if you need anything. Seeing my mother bow with perfect grace, there was a tangible tension amongst the family. However, when the food was served, they resumed their inappropriate discussions. For a while, both my mother and I did nothing, simply watching the plates empty before them. It's great that we all could come. We got rid of the bothersome daughter-in-law, and the food is delicious. Perfect. If you say that, she might get angry, you know. It's fine. She's not really one of us, to be frank. She never was. After all, it would be a shame to have a child from a single-parent family in our household. Hearing her mother-in-law's harsh words, my frustration boiled to an almost uncontrollable point. At that very moment, my mother entered the room with a dessert plate loaded with cake and fruit. Today, I've heard it's Miss Lucy's birthday and also her wedding anniversary with her husband. May I know where Miss Lucy is seated? In response to my mother's question about where to place the cake, the family looked at each other, confused. Nobody told you that? Excuse me, I'm the innkeeper, and I've clearly heard about it. Did Lou call? What? I didn't tell anyone. There was an awkward silence in the room, and the in-laws exchanged glances. In the end, the mother-in-law raised her hand. I am Lucy. I was too embarrassed to mention it at this age, but thank you all for the surprise. Given that the only woman in the room was the mother-in-law, her reaction was appropriate. However, my mother gave a faint smile upon seeing her act. Hey, what's so funny? Is it strange to be surprised at my age? No, not at all. I wasn't thinking that. Then what? Just bring the cake already. Yes, but before that, there's something I'd like to share. The irate mother-in-law barked at her. My mother composed herself. I swallowed hard. Lucy Mitchell is my daughter. What? Everyone present made a dumbfounded expression and raised their voices in shock. Seeing an opportunity, I swiftly opened the door from the adjacent room and stood next to my mother. Welcome. This innkeeper is my mother. It's a pleasure to meet you, Luke exclaimed. Lucy, why are you here? And what do you mean, she's your mother? It means exactly that. This inn belongs to my family. I'd also intend to take over this place someday. In truth, Luke had never met my mother before. While part of it was due to my mother being busy with the inn, Luke and his parents also insisted on not meeting her face to face. I had received a phone call from Luke for our wedding introduction, but he never met her in person. I showed my mother a picture of Luke and explained who he was. It was an unconventional introduction, but I believe my mother had accepted him. From your conversations earlier, could you please refrain from mocking and belittling my mother for being a single parent? That's right. What's with the southern drama? What grudge do you have against us? Neither Luke nor his mother nor anyone else seemed to realize the extent of the disrespect they had shown me. Exasperated, I let out my anger that had been building up. Grudges? If I have any grudges, it starts with you, Luke. I thought you were a good person when we got married, but it turns out you're a mama's boy. You married me, so you should prioritize me above all else, right? Don't join forces with your parents to mock me. Faced with my undeniable logic, Luke was rendered speechless. My mother just listened quietly to my outburst and to my in-laws. Why do you treat me this way? If you find me such a nuisance, I can leave the Mitchell family right now. What? You'll become a lonely, poor, single woman. Yeah, are you sure about being alone? Both the mother-in-law and Luke sneered. Looking back and forth between my mother and me, I stared back fiercely. It's okay. Actually, I'm pregnant, so I won't be lonely. And if I inherit this inn, I won't have any financial worries. The truth is, I found out I was pregnant last week, and I hadn't told Luke yet. Only my mother knew, which is why she wasn't surprised. A child? What are you talking about? I haven't heard about this. Wait, Lucy, if that's the case, it changes things. You should have told us sooner. Upon learning I was pregnant, the family immediately changed their tune. I couldn't stand their fickle and unreasonable behavior any longer and shouted again, "No, my decision is final. Let's proceed with the divorce through lawyers. I will live happily with my child and my mother." Saying this, I'd open the door to the hole they were in and left. The door slammed shut with a sharp noise. I'm done with this. My child will be happier without that family. Whether trying to change my mind or not, I received over 30 calls a day from Luke and his parents. Eventually, I blocked all their numbers. A few days later, I received a letter from Luke informing me of our official divorce. The letter expressed his regret and pleaded for me to return, but I ignored it and tore it up. I thought he might neglect our child just like he prioritized his parents over me, and I absolutely didn't want that. Being alone and lonely would be your fate, not mine. I thought he should enjoy his bachelor life. Currently, I am nurturing my child in my womb and discussing future plans with my mother. Once the child is born and grows a bit, I plan to send them to daycare and join the inn's business. The path to becoming the next innkeeper is long, but to raise my child properly, I am determined to work hard.